Hi, my honeys. Today we're going to be discussing karma numbers. If you are returning to my channel and returning to this series on numbers, thank you so much. I value your presence and your support. And if you are new here, you are most welcome. I am just Melissa, and this is Empower Empire, where we discuss all manner of things to do with personal empowerment. This week's episode is part 3 of a series on numerology and numbers, their power, their energy, and their influence. If you haven't watched the 2 previous episodes, please pause this one and first go and have a look at those, because it will give you a very solid foundation for what we will be building on in this week's episode. Before we can discuss karma numbers from a numerology point of view, we just need to get really clear on, first of all, what karma is and what karma is not. It can be a very complicated topic, unnecessarily, I think. The word karma literally just means action. And we all know the law of action is that it has natural consequences. And that is all that karma is. What we have chosen to do, how we have acted, even mentally, emotionally, and psychically, and the natural consequences that come as a result of having taken those actions. There is no such thing as negative karma that is some form of punishment. If something negative happens as the result of having done something that was negative in the first place, that is not a punishment, that is a natural return. And the energy returns to us in the same form that we sent it out, in order for us to see and to learn and to grow, to recognize the quality of the nature of the energy in our acts, in our emotions, and in our thoughts. And that is for our benefit. Likewise, if we act in alignment with truth as much as we understand it, if we act from pure and loving intention as much as we are able to do that, when we harmonize with the energy of life, which just gives, then that naturally has a reward. Many people think, I'm going to be generous. I'm going to give this thing because then it'll come back to me. Well, no, because it's not that simple. What was the intention there? The intention was not to align with the generosity of life, for love, and for joy, and for service. The intention there was to get. I'm going to give so that I can get. I'm sorry, my honeys, but it doesn't work that way. If we want to receive reward, then we need to truly be coming from selflessness, where our reward is the joy of the giving itself. And yes, naturally, life blesses us when we're more in alignment with its own energy, because we're inviting more life into our experience, and that is always a good thing. So in terms of karma numbers specifically, these numbers are derived from our dates of birth. And before we look into the specific numbers themselves, or a few of them, it's important to understand that our day of birth was chosen by the higher aspect of ourself, because it aligned with what our soul wanted to experience, chose to experience in this life for its own growth. So once again, we did not come in with a karma number that was a punishment, or a karma number that was a reward, minus our own will and choice in that regard. So whatever your karma number is, it's not about looking at it from a good and bad dualistic perspective. It's about looking at it through the eyes of our evolving soul. Recognizing my soul chose this particular challenge or these particular challenges. This was the path of my soul's growth. It is my will to have these experiences, however hard they may be. Our souls are extremely ambitious, my honeys. Before incarnation, we literally want to take on the world. We want to do it all. So very often, souls that are really keen for as much evolution as possible choose really, really tough incarnations so that the maximum amount of growth can be attained in one lifetime. The soul doesn't understand how hard it can be for our physical humans to process these experiences. The soul doesn't understand that sometimes it can all be a little too much. The soul has no concept of emotional weight and physical exhaustion. So we need to be a little bit gracious towards ourselves for having chosen the experiences that we did. And we need to be kind and loving to our human when we struggle with these things. It's starting to get really dark around here. We've got a thunderstorm blowing and I might have to pause this recording for all the background noise. Hopefully, I can get through this episode in one go. But now, if you wish to calculate your personal karma number, it's simply a matter of adding up all the digits of your date of birth, and that compound number is your karma number. Mine is the karma number 24. In order to understand what your karma number means, we need to just delve into the properties of double-digit numbers themselves. Our first karma number is the number 10. And in order to understand what the number 10 is relative to what the number 1 is, we need to understand the properties of 0. 0 empowers whatever number it follows. If you think about this in terms of mathematics and the decimal point system, every 0 in terms of number placement adds its value to that power. So 10, or the power of 10, or the power of 100, or the power of 1,000 in terms of number values. So the number 10 is a empowered number 1. Likewise, the number 20 is an empowered number 2. One of number 2's properties is that of learning, presumably in order to increase knowledge, understanding, insight, awareness, and the like. That's why we learn, right? 20 would be the empowered version. What is empowered knowledge? Empowered knowledge is enlightenment, right? So 20 is the number of enlightenment, the number of awakenings, greater knowledge. Same thing is true for 30. 30 is an empowered number 3. What are the properties of a number 3? 3 is the energy of life. It's the energy of the Trinity. So 30 would be embodied Godhood, a greater life. And isn't that true for all of us? I don't know about you, but in my 20s, I made all my mistakes. And in 30, we all starting to figure out life a little bit more. This also coincides with astrology, because at 29, we all experience our Saturn return. And as a side note, examining your numerology profile as well as your astrological natal chart together with each other will give you so many more puzzle pieces to make up the beautiful picture that is you, my honeys. The amount of harmony that you will find in these charts, the insight in combination with each other, is invaluable. I had to pause that for a little while there, my honeys. The rain was quite severe. I need a soundproof studio with decent lighting that doesn't reflect off of my glasses. Thank you, life, this year. But as I was saying, at the age of 29, we experience our Saturn return, which is the moment in which our karma comes full circle after our birth, because Saturn has an orbit of 29 years. And so very often, if there have been things that we have been ignoring, not facing, lessons we haven't been learning, it can be a challenging time in our lives, but also a time for profound growth and shifting into a timeline that is more in line with our plans for our life. So for me, terminal cancer was diagnosed at the age of 29. Again, that was not a punishment, because that's not what karma is. It was the natural consequence. I had a very traumatic childhood. And all of that suppressed emotion, all that trauma, all that negative energy, it has to take a physical form, because everything does. And in my case, my heart was strong and my mind was strong, so it manifested physically in my body. The reason why anything manifests for us is so that we can grow because of it, so that we expand. I turned 30 in a personal 9-year. It was truly a moment of completion for me. It was a chance to truly heal and to let go of so much of that negative emotion, change my story, process through my trauma. Now, I trust that I've given you a picture of what a karma number is and what adding 0 to a number achieves. 10 is one of the most profound karmic numbers. It is the divine code of creation. 1 is synonymous with I, as in I am. 1 is the creative energy, the beginning of manifestation. It is about what I image, and then it is empowered by 0, what I ordain. That is why 10 is the number of the Wheel of Fortune in the tarot. Because what we image and what we ordain, what we think and what we speak, what we visualize and what we feel, my honeys, is what creates the level of our fortune. Think about programming in terms of computers. All coding is zeros and ones. And as a little side note, just recently, with the unveiling of the quantum chip, how much processing capacity quantum chips have, it's essentially unlimited, because there is an infinity of infinities between 0 and 1 in potential. And not only that, which is already amazing, but they have now figured out how to get 1 to behave like itself, and also to behave like a 0, and to get 0 to behave like itself, and also to behave like a 1. So the possibilities and the potential is truly astounding. But it's important to note that 1 is 0. And again, please watch my first episode, Numbers, in regards to understanding more about that. The number 11, 22, 33, and 44 are considered master numbers. And I will dedicate an entire episode to those, as well as to angel numbers, which are sequences of any number repeated 3 or 4 times, and what their significance is. But all the other common numbers really are self-explanatory. If we look at the individual numbers they are composed of, it's intuitive. And the more you do this and the more awareness you bring to the process of doing this, the more naturally you will begin flowing in these interpretations. All the numbers from 12 to 52. It's about understanding the properties of their individual components and then figuring out through your awareness how those two properties in combination would behave. What kind of energy does that give us? For example, the number 12. We look at the properties of a number 1 and we look at the properties of a number 2. And then we ask ourselves, how would those properties relate to each other and how would they work together? We know that the number 1 is everything, the first emanation, unity consciousness, and all power, initiation, leadership. And 2 is the kneeling student who submits. So in combination, the number 12 becomes the number of sacrifice, a victim or an overcomer. Why? Because 2 is submitting itself to learn from number 1. Duality consciousness and separation wants to learn about all power. But all power has to sacrifice itself to teach number 2 about duality in incarnation. So how they relate to each other determines whether 12 as a karma number will be the eternal victim or the overcomer back to unity consciousness and power. How are lessons learned? These are all individual choices. The same thing with the number 13. Number 13 is an incredibly lucky number. The number 1 and the number 3. All power in life. Magic, or what seems like magic. The ability to truly manifest like a master, the magic wand. How to bring the full energy of life, the Godhood and the Trinity, into manifestation in this life. How to access all of our own power, and so on, and so on. The common numbers, as a final note, end at 52 because there are 52 weeks in a year. So what happens if we have a karma number from our date of birth or from a situation or a circumstance that we're looking to interpret that is higher than 52? Well, in the first example, we would use the mirror number. So this is true in the case of number 73, for example. Number 73 in karma numbers would be number 37. This is not true, however, for the number 56, because 56 becomes 65, which is not a karma number. So in that case, we would add those two digits together, 5 and 6, to get 11. So the karma number is the master number 11. And I will be discussing more about that in next week's episode. I hope I've intrigued you. I hope you will start to look into numbers, numerology, and karma numbers, and you'll join me again next week. I always forget to say, please subscribe. So for today, I remembered. I would value your likes. I always appreciate your feedback in the comments. And thank you for joining me. Much love.